Harmony. That's good, right? If we're all in sync, comfortable and not in conflict, that has to be a good thing, doesn't it? Or does it? I'm Diane.
And I'm Rebecca, and this is Headflex.
Welcome to Headflex, the podcast where you can listen to real-time coaching conversations to learn more about coaching and yourself.
Join us, Rebecca and Diane, coaches with years of experience, to flex the sometimes messy hot topics in the workplace that we don't always talk about. Today we're talking about harmony in teams, why accepting and letting things go can cause teams to underperform. Are you mistaking alignment, perhaps, for politeness? So we're going to think about how harmony can get in the way of high performance. What we mean by harmony in a working context, what are the warning signs to look out for, and what can we do about it?
This is a goodie, actually. It always makes me think about my kind of corporate life and those teams where I had really high harmony and maybe the impact that had on things. So, I mean, what do you mean by harmony at work? Because I think it means different things to different people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting word, isn't it? And harmony just suggests calm, peaceful. So suggesting that in a team environment, in a working environment, everything is just so. It's calm, it's peaceful. We're not challenging particularly. We're not disagreeing. And often people are in what appears to be alignment, but it can just be passive behaviour. So no one's stepping up. No one's pushing forward an opinion necessarily. Nobody's challenging opinions they disagree with. And decisions tend to get made quite quickly, but not necessarily the best decisions.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a masking going on, isn't there, of, actually we're just holding all of this and we're all fine and we're all good and this is all working really well. And it's like underneath, if you dig a little bit of digging, it's like, what does harmonious really mean? And is it true?
Yes. And I think that masking is a really important word here, because we are suggesting harmony, but actually what we're doing is masking disharmony with a harmonious response, if that makes sense. Gosh, confused myself with all my own words there. But I think we could sort of make the assumption, because everything's smooth and calm and fine, but actually what's often happening is progress is being stifled because we're stuck in business as usual. The hamster wheel's going round. It's not going round particularly fast and we're not really getting anywhere. But we're okay, and no one's arguing with each other, and everything's fine. And we go to work and we have a great day, and we come home and that's okay.
Yeah, God, that word stuck really sort of made me sit up, because you think that being harmonious means that things can get done and decisions are made, but actually the total opposite can be true, can't it? Because it can be really uncomfortable because people aren't really making decisions, or they're not having kind of good, healthy debate, because they're just trying to keep the harmony. That becomes the goal, almost.
Yeah.
And so that stuckness, God, that can feel really kind of awful at work if you feel that stuckness and you don't feel like you're proceeding forward and you're not getting things done, making decisions, doing great work, whatever it is. But the harmony becomes more important than anything else.
And I think it becomes habitual. It's just habitual to agree with the most dominant voice in the room. That's okay. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'll pretend I agree with it. I'll act like I agree with it. And then that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think it happens a lot. And I think sometimes we miss it. In leadership, that everything's okay. Everyone's agreeing with me, so we're fine, right? This is good. Everyone's happy with the decisions I'm making. This is okay. But actually, if you look at the results, and you look at the outcomes, and you look at the progress of the business, and you look at productivity and performance, but we're actually underperforming, because I think a harmonious team is not necessarily a high-performing team. And I think sometimes if you're looking at the results and you can't work out why the team isn't progressing, the business isn't going forward, we're not innovating or changing, why is that? Could it be that actually this surface harmony isn't that real?
It's also a bit bland. Do Do you know what I mean?
Love a bit of bland.
It's a bit boring. It's just like, oh God, can we have a bit of life here? And I think that we work well together because we're willing to debate and, hold each other to account a bit and disagree with each other, which means that actually, it's far from bland. Working together, and there's a bit of life and a bit of feistiness sometimes, and that's good because we think much better together. So I wonder if we're thinking about, if some of the leaders are listening to this or people in teams, what are some of the warning signs that it's becoming a little bit too harmonious and maybe a little bit beige?
Yeah. And I think one of the words that came up when I was doing a bit of research around this was toxic harmony. And I thought that's really interesting. When does harmony become toxic? I guess when really it's not harmonious under the surface. And maybe, like you say, it's boring. It's business as usual. And I think there's something in being valued there, isn't there? Being listened to, being valued again. If everything is just so, then do I really want to be in that environment? If you didn't challenge some of my opinions, ideas, assumptions,
I'm very happy to do that.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah. But that's how we come up with new ideas, I think. And that's how, from what started for us as something quite small and a little bit of a step by step, we've turned into something a bit bigger, a little bit bigger, but actually a lot more fun.
Yeah. And I think with a team, sometimes when you're working with a team and they're saying, yeah, but we're great, we're really performing. And you can use the sort of metaphor of a really shiny hood of a car, and you just say, let's just lift the lid, shall we? Just have a little tinker around in that engine. And you start to see not necessarily things that are really broken, but definitely things that maybe we've just overlooked. We've not gone there. But actually, if you continue to ignore that part of the engine, it'll start to corrode. And then, I don't know anything about engines. I don't even, this is a very tricky metaphor for me to go through. But, actually, you just start to, that part of the engine will start to deteriorate. And then that will become the reason why the engine and therefore the team starts to break down. So that shininess can cover up a whole lot of stuff underneath that I think you just need to start uncovering. And you can do that in a really good way. It doesn't have to be this, pointy finger piece of, but if you don't, then I think it can really lead to teams starting to break down eventually.
And I think there is a collective responsibility around that. If as a team you are all just getting the chamois out and polishing the hood, right? No one's going there. No one's challenging. No one is putting their head up there to say, actually, and then why is that? And that's really where the work starts, is why don't people feel comfortable? Why don't people feel valued enough? And what we notice in terms of that kind of warning sign is that often just a gradual performance decline. People might be bored. They might just be fed up and bored, so they just agree. So there's something there around motivation, something there around the freedom to be creative. And again, what we always talk about is the leaders creating those conditions for people to thrive, and to throw out some of the stale ideas.
Yeah. Well, it's, I think the other piece there when you were talking is just making me think about, the richness of being in a team, the richness of being in a business is that you get that diversity of opinion. The very best teams have people that have had different experiences, think differently, come from different cultures, different backgrounds. And actually that richness is what makes work really exciting at times. And if you don't encourage that discussion and that debate, those fabulous kind of different perspectives and different ways of tackling a problem that you might be totally blind to just gets so missed. And so it just feels like such a loss when you're not able to tap into that real richness of diversity and perspective that makes a team really exciting. I had that in my last kind of corporate life I lived in, and it was it's one of the things I really miss about working there was you could come in and have this real debate about what was going on in politics or whatever it was, and then get on with work and take that into your working life. So yeah, there's a real miss.
Yeah. And you could say, like, you're getting excited talking about it. It's a much nicer environment than that bland one we were just talking about, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think there's so much in that, in that whole idea of, feeling motivated, feeling like you want to contribute. And I love the word debate, and I love the fact that debates have two sides. It's not just saying, oh, I want to share my opinion. It's actually, I want to listen to yours. Actually, I'm really interested in it. If I say this, what the counter argument is to that, because what if I missed? And being open enough, because I've normally missed something, just let's face it. So it's like opening it up to say, I think this, what do you think? It's lovely. And I think sometimes what creeps in as well is when a team, do get on naturally, then people don't want to upset that. They want to be socially accepted. I don't want to be the one that's out of the gang, because the gang's great.
Yes.
Love this. And that can happen quite a lot when you get a manager that's promoted from within. They sort of try to create the harmony around them because it's nice. And these were my friends. So how can I manage them? Well, let's all just stay friends and that's fine.
Oh, yeah, that's classic, isn't it? Where, somebody doesn't quite know how to make that move up into being a managing a team, and they've all been kind of peers and now they're doing that. And so, yeah, keeping the harmony. That's often a one to unpick, isn't it? When you're coaching somebody that's just starting to manage a team for the first time and is really struggling to how to kind of set expectations and to have difficult conversations. It's a good one. It's also, the flip side to this, we've talked about it being kind of a bit bland and a bit harmonious, but actually there's stuff then that happens outside the room, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's when you notice that actually that disharmony is under the surface. And I think Brené Brown refers to it as the conversation after the conversation. And that's, your meetings are great, everyone sits and listens and agrees, and it's fabulous. And then you walk out the room and perhaps something you weren't comfortable surfacing in front of everybody else, you quite happily say to a colleague or a more trusted friend who's a colleague, and that's when we're having conversations after the conversation. And I think that's where I talked about that collective responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of the leader here; it's the responsibility of others. And I think maybe that moves us into what we can do about it. So if we notice this toxic harmony, if we call it that, and what can we do to sort of change that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just the very nature, it's like what we do in coaching all the time, isn't it? But, observing certain behaviours, actually just encouraging leaders to really start to notice the behaviours that are going on in a team, because you just fall into these norms, don't you? And I often, when I'm working with teams, talk about the fact, it's that forming, storming, norming, performing way of working as a team. And what you often find is that people have done the forming piece. So they've got together, they've formed well as a team, they skip the storming and they go straight to norming.
Yeah.
And so these habits become very ingrained very quickly in a team situation. So it almost takes that leader to take a step back, or through coaching or whatever it might be, to take a step out and say, okay, what am I actually seeing in this team? How are we behaving with each other? What's the language we're using? How loud is my voice compared to others? So that observing team behaviours, I think, is essential, really.
Yeah. And I think we can miss that, can't we? Sometimes we don't sit back and observe and notice. And, is there a quieter voice that we need to invite into the forum? And I've had situations in coaching, lovely work around this, where, a team's not progressing, but it's a happy team, or on the surface, it's a happy and harmonious team and everything's okay. So why aren't we doing better? And actually, we talk about building self-awareness, and this particular leader was able to build that self-awareness through the coaching process and recognize, I think it might be me.
Lovely.
I think actually I'm the dominant voice, because we were saying, look out for behaviours, observe your team. And the observation was actually it was them that had the dominant voice. It was them that was controlling all of the decisions, all of the input, all of the answers, very few questions. And they were able to then rebuild the trust in the team and give the team their voice back by actually showing that vulnerability, and actually, with courage, go back to the team and say, look, I have noticed, I think I am over controlling the conversations. I think I'm over controlling the content. and the decisions, and they came to some agreement in terms of a way of working. But that took a lot of vulnerability to be able to, put themselves out there and say, do you know what? I think this is me.
Yeah. What great piece of work to enable somebody to really just hold a bit of a mirror up and think, actually, I'm going to have that conversation. And it makes me think, I was reading an article just the other day about kind of feedback, and I'm running some workshops again for people on kind of appraisal. So I was kind of going back into feedback as a subject. And they were talking about how you kind of create a culture of feedback. And actually it starts with people seeking feedback because they can control it. But I was thinking about actually leaders then seeking feedback, because although it's not kind of creating disharmony, you are actually inviting perspectives and opinions in by saying, listen, I'd love to hear about what I could do differently to encourage more voice in the room. And so just asking something very specific gives permission for other people to say, actually, this is some of the things we could do. Or I noticed that, these meetings, we're not actually giving our opinions. How could we change that? So you then invite it in. It's in a controlled way. People feel safer. And then you get some great ideas, right? About actually how you can create more discussion and debate and different ideas. So, but again, starts with that leader, setting that cultural tone of that team. So yeah, God, this is a really good one. I could talk about this for ages.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that. And it's all about the noticing, isn't it? It's all about actually stepping back. What is going on here? If the team appears harmonious, just check in. Is it? Are the conversations happening behind the conversation?
Yes.
Are people just getting to the point where they think there's absolutely no point me even saying anything, so I won't? And if that's something that perhaps you're creating, it's that noticing. And again, it's not easy. I know people think coaching's like a nice little cozy chat. It's really not.
No.
Like these are, difficult personal observations, bringing a lot of awareness to our own behaviours, but how those behaviours are impacting on others. And then, just some small changes around that, like you said, just asking for some feedback, inviting more opinion, can really unlock some great thinking. And that's what we're working towards, isn't it? A really good team that works well together with diverse opinion and everyone feeling valued to make their contribution. So lovely.
Yeah. And it's making me think about that episode we did with Steve Hurstrom about smelly fish. Like, what are the smelly fish that you're not getting out on the table, and how do you encourage that in a way that makes people feel safe, and every team, most families too, but, a lot of teams have kind of the smelly fish that get kept in a bag under the table, and how do you get them out of the bag, and then how do you get them onto the table? So yeah, worth having a listen to that as well, because there's some links, I think, with this subject, which would be great.
Yeah. A nice link to healthy conflict as well, which is another subject that we explore on the pod. So yeah, great stuff. So I think there's a lot that we've spoken about there, and I think maybe it might be time to move to our self-reflection questions so that people can have a little think about it for themselves.
Absolutely.
So each episode we offer 3 coaching questions to help you self-coach on the subject we've discussed. Just take 5 or 10 minutes out of your day to pause and think about how you can use what you've heard today in your working life. So question 1, how well does your team respond to challenge and debate? Question 2, are you contributing to toxic harmony? And question 3, what's a good balance for you between getting on and healthy conflict? So this week, comment below if you have any hints and tips to share about how you've managed or acknowledged harmony that was becoming a problem. What did you notice? How did you turn things around?
Thank you for listening. Subscribe and follow Headflex for more coaching conversations. And if you're thinking about coaching for yourself or your teams, do drop us a note. We'd love to have a chat.